It feels good to finally have closure with the Amazing Spider-Man series. Sure, it was ill-fated, but it wasn't broken from the get-go. But what about the Amazing Spider-Man 3? Kyle, don't be a doofus, there is no The Amazing Spider-Man 3. But I got all these Sony email leaks and I got this danky Instagram page of a guy called Ryan Unicum, and Dennis Leary even said, Alright. We'll do it. We'll look into it. Before we begin, this video is sponsored by NordVPN. And in the description of this video below, you can see how you can get 4 months worth of free browsing by using discount code CHANNELPUP, so you can browse safer and more freely for less. It's safe to say that after The Amazing Spider-Man 2, The Amazing Spider-Man series and its credibility with the general audience was looking a little bit broken. Oh boy, yeah, can I vouch for that. So would an Amazing Spider-Man 3 have been able to win back some goodwill? Would it have been able to steer us back onto the path of realism and contemporary like The Amazing Spider-Man 1 was, and keep things relatively simple? While there is nothing concrete and set in stone about The Amazing Spider-Man 3, and the details here likely are not fully developed yet, from what we can see here, through email leaks and word from cast and crew, The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was definitely a sequel to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. It was moving definitely much more in that direction than it was The Amazing Spider-Man 1. But if that were the case, it would surely mean that the film would not just be a massive attempt at course correction like the 2 previous films were, so surely that would be kind of a good thing, right? The film wouldn't have to waste any time selling us on stylistic changes, it would just be a matter of telling its story, right? Sony always finds a way to try to sell you on something, as The Amazing Spider-Man 3 served not only to be the sequel to The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but also to set up future movies. Not Spider-Man movies, but Sinister Six and Venom standalone movies. So this information here comes from the Instagram of Ryan Unicum. There were 2 things that were cut from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The introduction of Mary Jane Watson, and the reintroduction of Richard Parker, Peter's long-lost father. These were allegedly cut so that they could be put into The Amazing Spider-Man 3 instead. After the death of Gwen Stacy, Peter would attend group grief counseling meetings. Do you have any idea how hard it is to say that? How many takes I had to record for that? Here's one. Group grief fuck. This is where he would meet Shailene Woodley's Mary Jane. Meanwhile, Richard Parker returns to Peter's life. We're not really sure how or why, but it's established that there are more nefarious connections between Richard Parker and Oscorp, which we already knew in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So this bit here comes from director Mark Webb. He wanted to introduce the Black Suit and Venom into this film, as he felt the low point of Peter's grieving would be a good time to introduce that story. We also know that Felicity Jones had signed on to play a more developed version of the Black Cat, but it's unknown what kind of role she would play in the film. But what we also know is that Sony did go on to try and develop a Black Cat and Silver Sable movie, so it probably would have spun off into that as well. But that's just hindsight. We don't 100% know if that plan was in the pipeline at the time of The Amazing Spider-Man 3's production. Dennis Leary was also signed on to return in a big way, and I quote from Dennis Leary that part of the story was going to be that Peter Parker would find a way to resurrect the dead people in his life, and that Captain Stacy would be one of those people. Going by that, it's presumable that we would also see the return of Martin Sheen and Emma Stone as Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy. I mean, why would Peter not bring those guys back if he could? I wonder if that ties into the symbiote somehow, because in the Ultimate Comics, the symbiote was treated as kind of a cure for cancer. Maybe in this one, it's like a cure for death. I don't know. Maybe he puts the symbiote over the dead bodies and maybe it brings them back. There you go, guys. If you thought Peter was kind of unlikable in the previous movies, well, now he's going grave robbing. I mean, none of that's confirmed, obviously, but resurrecting the dead was going to be a part of this film. Another leftover that didn't make the cut for The Amazing Spider-Man 2 that would have been touched upon more in this one was the fake-out death of Norman Osborn, that his head was being kept in a chamber and that maybe he too could be resurrected. This whole death is a new beginning thing sounds an awful lot like Gotham Season 2, and to be fair, I liked it there, but it had a much more kooky tone, whereas this is trying to be a bit more grounded, and that, you know, I don't know. So while Venom was set to be the big bad of this film, the Sinister Six were also going to be making an appearance, as confirmed by the email leaks of Amy Pascal. Now, hold fire on your insults for just a second, because the idea is that maybe Amy Pascal as a producer was pitching these ideas, and they would be developed a whole lot better by the writers. But as it stands, here is what we have. Peter gets the black suit from Venom, and discovers that Venom is a way too powerful foe to fight alone. So he turns to the Sinister Six for help. What happens when he does this? The The Sinister Six laugh at his new black suit, and Peter takes offense to this and removes it. One note in Miss Pascal's emails is that Peter cries. He's that hurt by this. And when he removes the black suit, it goes not onto Eddie Brock because he's already established as Venom, but Cletus Cassidy. And in this version, Cletus Cassidy is not a psychopath serial killer or anything like that. He is a homeless guy, and he gets sent over the edge, and when the symbiote attaches to him, he calls himself Carnage because Carnage is what he sees in society. He basically sees the world is carnage, so I shall become Carnage. It sounds like they were trying to do the sympathetic villain thing again. So Carnage would be set up for the Venom spin-off, and the Sinister Six would kind of get kind of a redemption here and be treated as kind of the Avengers when they get their turn. One fun little tidbit was I think they wanted Colin Farrell as the frontrunner to play Doc Ock, but other ideas they had in mind were George Clooney, and even Will Ferrell at one stage. They were going to go for something a bit more comedic. So if you thought that the Amazing Spider-Man 2 storyline had way too much going on, and that it was just existing to set up future movies, this film would have definitely continued that trend. Not being so much as the payoff to the Amazing Spider-Man series, but instead the setup for the future films would be that payoff. Another little tidbit, though not confirmed by anything at all this time, is that Harry was tricked into becoming the Green Goblin last time so that Norman Osborn could steal his body post-mortem. So that's what we have for The Amazing Spider-Man 3, a film about Peter meeting Mary Jane at grief counseling, his father coming back from the dead, him finding a way to bring other people back from the dead, Norman Osborn trying to bring himself back from the dead, the Sinister Six being fully formed, Venom being a fully formed threat, Peter getting the black suit, taking it off when the Sinister Six laugh at him, and the two teaming up to take down Venom, while Carnage is also born. I mean, it sounds like there would have been a bit more action than last time, so maybe that's a good thing. And as long as there were no retcons or revelations about Peter's origins like there were last time, we're still on a little bit of a better footing, I guess. I'm trying to keep this kind of balance between positive and negative, but to be honest, this really just doesn't sound good and reaffirms my lack of trust in Sony Pictures making further Amazing Spider-Man films. I mean, maybe it could give us a bit more clarity if we knew how Richard Parker was going to tie into things, if we knew if Mary Jane was going to play an actual role in the plot this time. I've just got this vision, though, that the Sinister Six would spend most of the film just stood there in a line while Spider-Man comes to them for help. We got no idea whether Venom would be Eddie Brock, or whether Eddie Brock would even be much of a character in this film. We don't know if the black suit would give Peter any additional abilities, or if it would turn him evil or anything. Or maybe it's more like the comics, where it's just sucking his life source out of him. Either way, this would have been the second Spider-Man 3 to feature a Green Goblin and a Venom. And it doesn't sound like much consideration has been taken into making the Sinister Six individual characters. Presumably we'd see the Gentleman again, but the Sinister Six lineup was revealed at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 during the credits, with the Green Goblin presumably leading the Sinister Six, Rhino making a return. Dr. Octopus was allegedly going to be quite a notable role, as they had a big cast list of who they wanted to play that one. The Vulture would be in there, and we saw his wing pack in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Kraven the Hunter would be in the lineup, and Mysterio wearing presumably not a fishbowl on his head, but a smoky masquerade mask. It's difficult to tell how these characters and their abilities would be showcased in The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Likely not. Likely they would just be treated as kind of the group, and then they'd all get their development in the Sinister Six movie, provided that film was committed to being a movie and not just an advertisement for other spin-offs. It very much sounds like more of what we've kind of had before, where Mark Webb wants to make a film about Peter attending grief counseling, meeting Mary Jane, becoming kind of comforted by the black suit, I guess, while Amy Pascal, the studio, probably Avi Arad, wanted to just go nuts with Spider-Man fan service. Put the Sinister Six in, put Black Cat in, put Venom in, put Carnage in. Like, I'll be real here, I wouldn't mind a proper conclusion to the Amazing Spider-Man series, but it doesn't sound like the Amazing Spider-Man 3 was going to be that. As a matter of fact, they even had plans for an Amazing Spider-Man 4 to be worked on while they'd be working on the Amazing Spider-Man 3. It seems like the producers really had a lot of confidence in the Amazing Spider-Man brand, but it was definitely an uphill battle. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 received an all-time low of box office figures for the Spider-Man brand, which naturally set Sony into a little bit of a panic mode. Even though the film was successful, they wanted to kind of identify why the figures were in decline. The thing is, producers rarely go online and read reviews, and I think sometimes you've been living in that world where marketing is everything. Perspective can draw all the wrong lessons from what people are saying, and that looks to be kind of the case with The Amazing Spider-Man 3's production. People didn't like The Amazing Spider-Man 2 because it was too much setup and they had too much going on. That must mean there wasn't enough fan service. We need way more fan service. That'll really leave them leaving the theaters feeling excited. I think that's honestly just how it went. So the viewing figures were low, they weren't really sure what they were doing going wrong. But I think the real kicker was when Sony had a falling out with Andrew Garfield after he failed to attempt a big brand meeting where they were going to present him as kind of their mascot. Spider-Man would be the mascot for Sony Pictures, and they wanted a big event in, I think, Japan or somewhere in Asia anyway, and they were going to present Andrew Garfield as Sony's big new moneymaker, Spider-Man. But Andrew Garfield phoned in sick and was fired by higher-ups at Sony. So now they needed a new Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was cancelled, but there were plans set to go ahead to have the Sinister Six introduce a brand new Spider-Man, who would then branch off into his own adventures. But Sony were also fully aware that Marvel Studios was knocking on the door asking if they could use Spider-Man for their big Civil War project. They were aware that there was demand for an MCU Spider-Man film. Now, I'm sure my comment section is going to want to take a big dump on Amy Pascal after those email leaks and her ideas. But bear in mind, she was one of the pioneers in the Sony Marvel Studios Spider-Man deal. While she was reluctant to sign any kind of deal with Marvel Studios while the Amazing Spider-Man series was going on, allegedly throwing a sandwich at Kevin Feige upon his initial request to have Spider-Man cross over into Captain America Civil War, it's at least safe to say that she and a lot of other people at Sony Pictures made the right call when going into a partnership with Marvel Studios. Now, a fun fact, Marvel Studios never intended to use Iron Man in the first Spider-Man film of their run. While Spider-Man Homecoming would have a few references to the external Marvel Cinematic Universe, Iron Man was never intended to be as big of a part of Peter's story as he was made to be in the end. A part of the deal for Spider-Man Homecoming was that Sony Pictures wanted this to be their most star-studded Spider-Man film yet. They felt that there was a lack of credibility for the Spider-Man brand overall and wanted another superhero alongside him that had a bit more street cred. So they wanted to work with Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man. Sony Pictures were aware of the absolute Goliath success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe entering its third phase, and wanted to capitalize on that as much as possible, with as much evidence to Spider-Man Homecoming being a Marvel Cinematic Universe film as possible. What better evidence can you get than Iron Man being on a Spider-Man film poster? A move that is divisive, but that's it for today's episode of Just Blame Sony. The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was certainly going to be something. Now, as I've said before, I don't think the Amazing Spider-Man franchise was doomed from the start, while I do have a very lukewarm opinion of the first film. I think once you move past that origin, the Amazing Spider-Man 2, a proper Amazing Spider-Man 2, one with the same sort of style and aesthetic as the first one, could have done something really fresh and really new. Imagine having a villain that actually complemented the realistic tone, like maybe Tombstone or maybe Hammerhead. Perhaps Kingpin? We could have had a really cool, realistic Spider-Man film there. And who knows, because of that, maybe an Amazing Spider-Man 2 could have been as beloved as The Dark Knight or something. I think after The Amazing Spider-Man 2, realistically, it was too late to properly save the Amazing Spider-Man franchise, even if a third film was going to be better. And it would have just been a matter of prolonging the inevitable, because while it might answer a few questions from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, it was pretty clear that they were happy to open up an abundance of new questions to be answered in those spin-offs, which would have led to just another unsatisfying film, probably with diminishing returns, because if a film's unsatisfying, people are just not gonna want to watch it. What do you guys think? Comment below and discuss, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, why don't you head over to channelpup.net, where we got a blog page called Dr. Blogtopus, but as well as that, you can also buy merch, such as this awful t-shirt. But if you want to be a part of the super fun Kennel Club, why not hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below, you can check out the links to my Patreon and my Twitter. I think that would be pretty sweet for both of us. What do you say, champ? But in all seriousness now, thank you so much for watching, my fellow home dogs. Have a great day, because you and I both know you've earned it. I'll catch you next time.